Right now, you are more genetically identical to every other human on Earth than a chimpanzee is to the chimp living one valley over. That's not a metaphor. That's a measurable fact buried in your DNA, and it points to something almost unthinkable. 74,000 years ago, humanity nearly didn't make it. A volcano on a small island in Indonesia erupted with more force than anything else in the last 2.5 million years, and the leading theory says it crushed our entire species down to as few as 3,000 people. 3,000. Fewer humans than fit inside a single stadium section, tasked with being the future of everyone who would ever be born after them, including you. But here's the twist that took scientists decades to uncover. The people who survived weren't just lucky. Buried in a cave on the coast of South Africa is proof that while the sky was turning to ash, some humans weren't just scraping by, they were thriving. Here's the hard evidence. About 74,000 years ago, a volcano called Toba on the island of Sumatra erupted with a force so massive that geologists still use it as the benchmark for worst-case scenario. Ice cores pulled from Greenland show a spike of volcanic sulfur locked into the ice at exactly this period. Ash from that single eruption has been found over 5,000 miles away, dusted across sediment layers in India, and even reaching the coast of South Africa. For years, scientists pieced together a chilling theory using DNA. When researchers looked at the genetic diversity of every human alive today, they noticed something strange. We are all remarkably similar, genetically speaking, especially compared to other great apes. Chimpanzee populations show more genetic variation within a single forest than humans show across the entire globe. That kind of narrow genetic diversity is the fingerprint of a bottleneck, a moment where a population crashes down to a small number of survivors before slowly building back up. Researchers matched the timing of that genetic bottleneck to the Toba eruption and proposed a chilling number: as few as 3,000 to 10,000 people worldwide, not per continent, worldwide. For context, that's fewer people than fit in a mid-sized university lecture hall, tasked with being the entire future of the human race. So how did they do it? Archaeologists studying this period keep circling back to three specific survival advantages that separated the humans who lived from the ones who didn't. The first is the ocean. At a site called Pinnacle Point on the southern coast of South Africa, archaeologists found something remarkable. Layers of shellfish remains stacked up in a cave, dated to right around the eruption window. While inland populations were watching their food sources collapse under ash-choked skies, coastal humans had discovered a food source that didn't rely on sunlight or rainfall at all: the intertidal zone. Mussels, clams, and other shellfish don't care about a volcanic winter. They just sit there, waiting to be harvested twice a day, every day, forever. The humans who figured out how to read the tides didn't just survive, they thrived. The second is fire, but not fire the way you're picturing it. This wasn't campfire for warmth fire. This was engineering. Evidence from that same coastal region shows humans heat-treating stone, deliberately baking silkrete rock in buried fires to change its internal structure, making it easier to flake into sharper, more precise tools. That's not primitive survival. That's applied material science, performed by people who had just watched the sky turn to ash, using knowledge passed down and refined over generations. The third is symbolism. In those same layers of sediment, archaeologists found chunks of ochre, a reddish pigment, some of them scratched with deliberate crosshatch patterns. Others were ground down, apparently to be mixed and used as a kind of paint or dye. Somewhere in the middle of what might have been the worst environmental catastrophe in the history of our species, humans were still making art, still marking their bodies, or their tools, or their walls with meaning. That single detail tells you something almost unbelievable. Even while fighting for their lives, they never stopped being human in the fullest sense of the word. But here's where it gets really interesting. In recent years, a growing number of researchers have started pushing back hard against the entire catastrophe narrative. A detailed study published in the Journal of Human Evolution went back through the paleo-environmental and archaeological record and found something surprising. There's remarkably little direct evidence that human populations anywhere actually crashed because of Toba. Excavations at that same Pinnacle Point site show continuous, uninterrupted human occupation spanning the eruption. No gap, no collapse, just people going about their lives, making tools, gathering shellfish, before, during, and after the ash fell. Similar patterns show up at sites in India. The population dip that shows up in our DNA may be real, but newer analysis suggests it might have started tens of thousands of years earlier than Toba and continued slowly for tens of thousands of years afterward, the result of long-term climate shifts, not one single apocalyptic afternoon. In other words, the story might not be a volcano nearly wiped us out and we barely survived. The story might be something even more impressive, a supervolcano, detonated with a force almost impossible to comprehend, and our ancestors barely blinked. They didn't cling to survival by accident. They had already built the tools, literal and social, to handle a crisis like this. The volcano wasn't the reason humanity almost ended. It was a stress test that revealed just how prepared we already were. And that's the thing we're sitting with. Every single person alive today is descended from people who faced down a sky full of ash with nothing but stone tools, shellfish, fire, and each other, and figured out a way forward anyway. That instinct didn't disappear when the ash settled. It's still running underneath everything you do. Every time you adapt to a setback you didn't see coming. Every time your community pools its skills to get through something hard. Every time someone finds a clever workaround with nothing but the resources already in front of them. That's the same circuitry Pinnacle Point ran on 74,000 years ago. You're not just descended from survivors. You're built from the same problem-solving instincts that got them through the worst week our species has ever had.